Welcome everyone. Hope everyone can hear me okay. And if you have any issues, please relay them in the chat. My name is Jeremiah Brenner. I am a Senior Product Success Manager here at ServiceNow. I want to say welcome and thank you for taking time out of your day to go through the webinar with us today on the ESG Maturity Model. So a couple of housekeeping things. There is a safe harbor notice just for any forward-looking statements. So just to be aware of that. And as well, this is one of many webinars and meetups that ServiceNow hosts and facilitates. So please do join us for future events. You can scan this QR code. There'll be links shared in the chat, but we'd love to see you out at future events and hear your feedback as well. So in terms of the housekeeping items, there will be time for Q&A after the presentation, but please do use the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask questions throughout the session. The session is also being recorded and will be shared on the ServiceNow community, so keep that in mind. And after the session ends, there's a short survey that you'll be asked to fill out, and we really appreciate you taking the time to do that to help inform future sessions and helping us move forward. And also for those here in the United States and around the world that are participating on the call, I wanted to say thank you to any veterans and acknowledge Veterans Day that's happening here in the United States and Canada and other parts of the world on Friday, November 11th. Thank you for your service and thank you for your friends and family that have served. So I'd like to briefly introduce myself and then also my co-presenter today, Jagan Rao. So my name is Jeremiah Brenner. I'm the Senior Product Success Manager dedicated to ESG. I've been in the company for just under a year, but I've been in the ESG space for just over 13 years, working in corporate functions, running ESG programs, consulting, and my most recent career before joining ServiceNow was in the ESG risk and rating space, leading project management. So let me hand it over to Jagan to introduce himself quickly.
Sure. Thanks, Jeremiah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As Jeremiah said, my name is Jagan Rao. I lead product success for risk, ESG, and SecOps BUs within ServiceNow. I've been with ServiceNow for the last 3 years. If you have any questions, please do post in Q&A. We have other team members who are going to answer. And happy to be here and discuss about the ESG and the journey and the maturity model of ESG.
Thanks, Jagan. And as I mentioned, you'll hear from Jagan later today related to some of our expert services and partner programs, but Jagan's also helping to facilitate the moderation of the event and will help answer any questions you have with some of the product folks and facilitators that are also on the call. So with that, we'll do a quick poll. So you'll see probably a poll pop up on your screen. It should only take a few seconds. We're just interested to see what function within your company you're currently working in to give us a sense of the demographic of the room. So we'll let that run for a few seconds. Okay. Just a few more seconds and we'll end. So based on what I'm seeing, it looks like we've got quite a few ServiceNow partners in the room, as well as folks working in ESG and sustainability, which is great, IT risk, and a few other spaces within their company. So really great to see that and appreciate that the response to the poll. Okay. So without further ado, let's get into the topic at hand. First, let's talk about ESG and why it's important. For folks that work in this space and for those that haven't, I'm sure you've heard the term ESG. What's unique about ESG is the evolution of how this term has become part of our lexicon in today's business world, and typically had previous iterations and terms and definitions when you would hear it over the last 15 to 20 years about sustainability, global impact, CSR, corporate responsibility, sustainable development, corporate citizenship, and shared value. When we talk about ESG here at ServiceNow, what we're talking about is that it represents risks and opportunities that will impact an organization's ability to create long-term value by considering the need of all stakeholders, not just shareholders. So it's a balanced view between the environmental, social, and governance pillars, the risks and opportunities that come along with those for an organization. And so when we talk about these pillars, there's typically, different topics that would fit under the umbrella of the ESG terms. When we talk about environment, we're talking about climate change, natural resource usage, pollution and waste, and opportunities as well to be innovative in the environmental space, using renewable energies, cutting energy costs and usage, operating green buildings and following things like LEED, or implementing renewable energy and solar, wind, et cetera, within your buildings or properties usage. On the social side, we talk about human capital, product liability, stakeholder opposition, social opportunity, and many other topics under this pillar. But typically, you're talking about people, you're talking about the ability of those people to have unbarred access or barriers in front of them for their career or for societal day-to-day. And so labor management, health risks, wellness, supply chains, typically are topics you'll find under this social pillar. And then finally, the governance pillar, the pillar that's focused on corporate governance and corporate behavior. How is a company, how is an organization performing as a corporate citizen? And when you split those two pillars down, you look at board diversity, executive pay tied to ESG metrics or ESG performance, ownership, cybersecurity, and risk management, and then corporate behavior, obviously business ethics, policies, anti-competitive practices, financial systems instability, and tax transparency. So these three areas typically will comprise the foundational elements of when we talk about ESG programs and how ESG programs are setting their targets, goals, and what they publicly will disclose. ESG is really important for a number of other reasons. So you've got better long-term business outcomes, and it's better for planet and for people. And so why do companies care so much about ESG? Well, traditionally, a lot of this was voluntary. And over the last decade plus, it's increasingly becoming more mandatory in different parts of the world. There's more regulation taking place and legislation being drafted. And the number of shareholders or stakeholders in this case has expanded. So we're talking about investors, customers, NGOs, insurers, lenders, and how you manage your ESG portfolio, your risks and opportunities can have direct impacts on your business, but also indirect impacts on your brand reputation, talent retention, and the reward and value structure that you have within your business. This is just some, definitely not all, of where ESG climate-related disclosures and regulations exist. Europe, Asia, more so now taking place in the US with the SEC climate disclosure that's been proposed, that's still being discussed, really moving more towards standardized, uniformed, and required reporting for organizations, especially in the area of the environment, in the E part of the ESG. And this is only going to become more prevalent over the next couple of years. So it's a really important and interesting topic that companies, especially depending on where they're at on their maturity, are really looking at to figure out where they can mitigate their risks and also where they can create better opportunities for their business from a people, process, and technology perspective. And when you think about an organization's structure and the leadership of that organization, the lanes that they manage, these are topics that are critical to folks at the C-suite level. So from a COO perspective, they're looking at operational resilience, they're looking at efficiencies, business model, innovation and scale. CFO, mandatory and voluntary disclosures, investment portfolio, audit and risk compliance, resiliency. CIO, looking at sustainable IT infrastructure or green infrastructure, green IT. Rationalization of the services and applications of the infrastructure, ethical AI, the CMO, again, brand, reputation. How are we taking our efforts and attracting, retaining top talent through how we're marketing our company, but also securing business relationships, partnerships, and expanding our growth in different markets. CHRO, obviously attracting top talent. This is increasingly become important for generations coming out of university or higher education that are going into the workforce, looking for companies that are demonstrating a commitment that's transparent and accountable to ESG values. And then finally, the CISO, so cyber resiliency, ESG factors impacting cyber threats, IP protection, and competitive behavior. These are all types of ESG topics that would be important to a typical C-suite structure. And so, at this level, the level of effort, resources, and strategy at the C-suite level obviously will feed into how many initiatives and resources they put behind meeting some of these risks and opportunities. And I can say here at ServiceNow, this is definitely top of mind. We have a robust global impact and now on now team that does terrific job doing reporting and tracking of ServiceNow's ESG portfolio. They are actually one of our first customers for the ESGM product, which I'll talk about shortly, with our goals here being sustaining our planet, creating equitable opportunity, and acting with integrity, leveraging the power and the opportunity with the ServiceNow platform. So it's a topic that not only we have developed a market offering for, but is core to our DNA and core to our values as a brand. So when we talk about ESG challenges, some things that we've heard in the market. So there's limited visibility into ESG data. Data on ESG initiatives is scattered across multiple disconnected systems, legacy systems, spreadsheets, emails, across different business units. There's an unclear path to achieve stated ESG targets. So leaders don't have clarity on their role in meeting corporate ESG objectives. There's limited accountability, and there's a stall in the process. So there's some kind of a strategy or a goal, but how it's implemented and operationalized isn't always clear to the folks that have to own those operational activities. It's time-consuming manual processes. So sourcing ESG data from decentralized data owners prevents sustainability teams from focusing on more strategic activity. Having been in this role in a previous career, I know how much time it takes emailing and chasing down data, bringing people up to speed, and cutting across siloed business structures to try to explain in their terms what ESG is and why the data that you're trying to capture is important for the company and for the focus of your role in the business. And so the quotes, have come directly from customers and potential customers we've talked to. We can't wait another year for improvement. Data's everywhere. We need transparency and actionability of ESG data for our stakeholders. Wasting too much time chasing department leads. And we have ambitious goals, but we have no way to hold the business accountable. So how do we address these challenges, and how do we address them at ServiceNow? Within the ServiceNow offering, there are a couple things to highlight. There's the ESG Command Center, which is a combination of our ESGM product, the ESG management product, and strategic portfolio management and integrated risk management. This is a comprehensive solution for managing at a higher end of the ESG maturity model, which I'll talk about in a second, ESG goals, targets, implementation, and strategy. The great thing about this command center and the product and solution itself, it's built on the Now platform. It leverages the power of the platform for its workflows, creation, customization, functionality. So it's built on a product that has expansive use cases and is flexible and adjustable and agile enough to adapt to the changing needs in the ESG space. And also within the ESG portfolio of the command center, there are opportunities to connect with other ServiceNow products, IRM, HRM, VRM, BCM. All of these products have some element of ESG related data or content that can be tied and connected back to the command center or ESG management to allow a collection of existing ServiceNow customer products to provide data for their ESG goals and targets and metrics. The ESG domain is vast and constantly evolving. As I mentioned, this product is built on the platform that changes with those, anticipates with the changes that are happening in the marketplace, and looks forward-looking to adopt best practices in the platform with low code and no code, which translates down to our ESGM product in the command center. So when we talk about this in a different way, from the ESG perspective, there's a couple different focus areas here. We have got disclosure driven. So we're collecting metrics from the ServiceNow platform, which is being fed potentially by external data sources such as ESG applications, manufacturing, IT, the cloud, customer service, HR, and finance. In the disclosure-driven model, the core focus is identifying material topics using ESGM, setting targets, goals with key metrics, managing performance for those metrics, and then publishing disclosures such as SASB and GRI. As a company evolves or expands their use cases toward the higher end of the maturity model, now we're moving into governed. We're planning initiatives and executing projects using SPM in combination with ESGM. We're establishing policies and governance internally and managing those with IRM. We're doing audits on ESG program data using the power of the IRM application. And if you've expanded your use cases and pursued the higher end of the maturity model for ESG, where you fully integrated ESG as a strategic initiative and an operationally executable program, now you've fully adopted the integrated side of the maturity model, where you're collecting metrics, monitoring controls, collecting evidence, and monitoring risk. And this all happens through an integration with IRM, SPM, and ESGM at the high end of that maturity model spectrum. And so when you think about the general activities that feed into that model and where potentially you're at, or where you were at, or where you want to be as an organization, the way that we've broke it down, you've got ad hoc activities, disclosure-driven, governed, and an integrated. Within the ad hoc model, typical activities would be done through silo-related discussions with business stakeholders. You don't really have a materiality assessment. There might not be any formal disclosures. Typically, things are done in emails or spreadsheets or a more informal way. As you move through that maturity model up to disclosure-driven, now things are starting to become semi-automated. You're looking at opportunities to leverage, meet regulatory compliance, investor disclosure expectations. You've got ESGM to support those metric creation, targets, goal setting, reporting, and dashboards for annual reporting for the C-suite or for externally. On the governed side, now we're moving up. We're using IRM or SPM or both. You've got formal tracking of ESG initiatives, governance, policies, and compliance. You've assigned C-suite responsibilities. There's a higher level of visibility and performance of ESG performance across the business, and it's well understood by leadership. Finally, getting to the integrated side where you fine-tune your processes, your people and experience, and their technology. It's integrated across your enterprise and the value chain. ESG decisions are not separate from business decisions, but are integrated into business and strategy. They're measures that align to executive compensation. There's integrated reporting across the value chain where ESG, IRM, or SPM are fully utilized to provide you with a high-value, integrated, operationalized, and strategic ESG program, and which ultimately leads to increased efficiency and effectiveness for ESG practitioners and ESG as a opportunity and risk focus area within the business. So let's talk about some examples of this. So let's focus on environment for greenhouse gas tracking and reporting. Typically, what would happen within each of these lanes for GHG? So in the ad hoc model, loosely defined roles. GHG might be captured, again, in emails and spreadsheets, if it's being captured at all. The quality of the data might be questionable because of how it's stored and captured in the value chain of that data and transfer of ownership of that data. There's unknown environmental regulatory compliance issues. There's really not many policies or procedures that are formalized for stakeholders to adhere to and follow. And the systems and platforms are not fully utilized for GHG tracking and data. So very ad hoc model. Disclosure driven. Now things are getting a bit more clearly defined because we have to disclose for our stakeholders, our shareholders across the value chain, inside and outside the organization. So Now we're using the power of ESGM. We're collecting metrics. We're improving data quality. We're completing materiality assessments. And our reporting with ESG frameworks is aligned to what is material for us as a business. There's intentional thinking about how we are integrating our systems that provide data and content related to ESG reporting and operations. Now, governed. ESGM, IRM, SPM, we're collecting metrics, we're monitoring controls, and we're collecting evidence. We've established steering committees at the people level. We've got new teams formed in CSR or ESG or corporate responsibility. There's strategic planning leverage. We've got operational process alignment and science-based targets, as a prime example, have been leveraged for our business as a commitment for us to reduce our carbon footprint and track that process with auditable and traceable data. Data reporting and monitoring capabilities have increased for applicable systems for GHG. And then finally, for the integrated side, we've built off our success with the governed model. We've set targets and goals publicly that we've been able to track against and report how we're doing well and we're not doing well. We've integrated this into the C-suite discussions for business planning processes for the 3 to 5 year planning cycles that businesses will go through. ESG is a part of the discussion and core to many of the business functions and areas that are being discussed for budget, resource, and technology. And at the very end, Alt's future planning and system planning has been updated, and designs include applicable data needs for the environmental pillar in this case. And so what does that actually look like? Those activities when we're leveraging the power of the platform and the product and solution. So we've identified material topics. You'll notice that ad hoc is no longer a part of this discussion because there is no system integration or product being leveraged for an ad hoc model. Scope 1 and 2, 3 emissions. We've identified material topics within this. We've set goals and key targets. We've published disclosures for different frameworks that are important to us or to our partners or regulatory required. On the governed model, we've planned and executed projects using SPM. So not only have we created goals, but we have a tangible, trackable program in place to see how we're going to meet those goals. We've established policies and governance. We've been able to audit or provide auditable data to third parties to go in and say, yes, this data is correct. Your GHG calculations are correct. These are verifiable. And then on the integrated side, again, people, purpose, strategy, all aligned within ESG. The targets, successes, and opportunities are tied to leader compensation. They are tied to leadership performance. And the risk for GHG reporting from a regulatory perspective in the current or future environment is very low because the company is actively managing, tracking, and addressing ESG-related risks, and in this case, related to GHG reporting and tracking. Okay, so let's talk about the supply chain and the S category. Very similar types of activities from a data capture perspective, but from different areas. So in the social pillar programs, not a lot of clear ownership, poor understanding of the supplier risk, upstream and downstream. We've got ad hoc and reactive assessments happening. So you're going to a vendor, they put in an RFP, but they want to understand how you're managing your supply chain. You would do it to satisfy that RFP, but it's not something that's done on a regular basis. There's limited external reporting and little to no technology used for tracking how supply chain, ESG-related topics around supply chain are addressed or material. Again, very similar discussion as we move up the disclosure-driven to integrated. Now you're using the ESGM to collect, set, and track metrics and your goals and targets. You've got clearly defined responsibilities that cut across and de-silo the functions in the business units. There's materiality assessments. There's alignment with ESG standards such as the UN's SDGs, CDP, GRI. You may or may not have done some compliance reporting depending on the market you're in. And system and platform integrations continue to be thought about as how can ESG data be connected and de-siloed from the systems and legacy platforms that we have in place. Now, as we moved up, we've set up committees, there's new task force, there's policies and scorecards. We send scorecards to our suppliers. to understand how they're performing on their ESG goals and targets and how those align to our strategy. That allows us to understand the risks associated with working with these suppliers up and downstream. We've got transparent reporting and statements that we've made to the public and to our C-suite. And we're tracking and monitoring the connection and increased technological connectivity in the background while we're leveraging the ESGM, IRM, and SPM products and solutions. And finally, on the integrated side, leadership compensation, third-party validation, supply chain KPIs are set, tracked, and managed, and ownership and prioritization of the policies that support our stance or the company's stance on the supply chain, the material topics that exist within the supply chain, and the risks are all tied to corporate compensation and leadership strategy. So you're seeing a bit of a trend here as we go across these different pillars, and ultimately, the data, the content may be different, but a lot of the operational policies or policies and operation processes are very similar as you move up the maturity model. So again, what have we done with our disclosure-driven maturity level? We've done a material assessment, human rights, community relations, health and safety, material sourcing are important. We've set goals and key metrics. We've measured performance against those key metrics, and we're disclosing the information, not only for business partners, not only for shareholders or stakeholders, but for our employees, for NGOs, for third-party organizations, the wide range of stakeholders that typically care about ESG, whether regulatory or private. Now we're governing things. We've planned and executed projects. We've set our goals. We're tracking against our goals. We're finding out where there's risks to meeting those goals and how we need to level set and address those early. We've set policies, and again, our data is auditable. We live in an age where data is the most important currency, in the business world. How that data is handled, managed, accounted for, tracked, reported, and audited, and ultimately being able to be audited is core to ESG. The ability of ESG data to be validated and confirmed, especially when you hear words like greenwashing being thrown around across this space and companies being accused of that and not being able to provide audited or auditable data that could be submitted and show the commitment to their goals and targets. And then finally, on the integration and integrated side, we've done supply chain, key performance. We've set targets, and there's part of the employee goal setting. There's a technology workflow integration, et cetera. And then finally, on the governance side, very similar setup to what I was mentioning with the supply and the environmental side. So lack of roles, low-level understanding of what board diversity even means. What does it mean? Have we even looked at what diversity of the board looks like within our business? Ad hoc and reactive assessment. So there might be an inquiry from a potential partner or an employee, but it's very reactive and not proactive in how it's managed. Don't have really any targets or goals for how we're managing board diversity, what we want to expand on, what we need to improve, because we haven't understood our material topics. And little to no technology to track or report on any of this. And as we move into disclosure, ESGM, now we're aligning with standards. We're doing materiality on what are some of the issues facing our organization in comparison with our peers, in comparison with best practices for our industry and sector. Doing those materiality assessments helps us set goals and targets as a company, and using ESGM helps us set the metrics to track against those. We're quantifying and reporting and disclosing our metrics in a standardized approach. And our platform integrations are continuing to expand. Steering committees, new teams formed for DEI and affinity groups within the business comprised of employees to get them engaged and actively contributing and feeling like they have a voice within this pillar. Surveys, policies and processes, reporting and statements, and tracking and monitoring via technology through ESGM, IRM, and SPM, connecting all the data points that are coming from different systems, different people, third parties, connecting all of them within the ServiceNow platform through these products and solutions to allow goal setting, tracking, reporting, dashboards for C-suite level, as well as the program owners. And then finally, on the integration side. So Fully integrated on the board diversity side. Leadership compensation is tied to the performance on the board diversity metrics that have been set. Third-party validations on the reporting and internally and externally. There's diversity KPIs that have never been set before for the business that are now being set. We've now taken ownership and prioritization of this material topic for our business, or the topics that are material under board diversity, gone from an ad hoc model of loosely tracked, not fully understanding our risks and opportunities, and fully integrated those into our strategy and business model to maximize the value add that managing this topic can take from a brand perspective, from attracting and retaining top talent, from meeting regulatory requirements and being a good corporate citizen. And it's fully integrating our strategy and adding measurable business value in brand affinity, turnover rates, growth of revenue from new customers and things like that, all because we've integrated this fully into our business strategy and process, leveraging ESGM, IRM, and SPM. And again, those types of the activities that go along with those measures, you're looking at board size, gender equality, age dispersion. You're setting goals and targets. You're committing to things. You're publishing things externally. You're hiring people in a different way and retaining those people in a different way. Implementing new processes and procedures and enforcing those and having trackable data that backs up a policy. Many times policies can get put into place and they live on the intranet somewhere, but the operational side of how we actually track the metrics and compliance with those policies can sometimes be a gap that can be closed with IRM and SPM. And then finally, again, from the integrated side, board diversity totals are published externally. Diversity is part of the leadership strategy and goal setting, and we created process workflows where integration is high through our systems, through our people, and through our technology. So I wanted to quickly move into just showing what's under the hood for the product and the solution. This is an example, in case you haven't had access to the ESGM product before, an example of the dashboards that come out of the box with the product. And you can see here, there's different levels of your goals, targets, disclosures, your material topics. It basically provides you an executive overview of your company's ESG quote unquote posture. It allows you to track and monitor, and you can check the status of your ESG goals. You can create metrics. Your project and programs related to ESG goals are tracked, your risks, disclosure requests, the most material topics and their impact to your business can all be reflected in this dashboard that's easily shared with C-suite and folks that are few levels removed from the ESG program that are only concerned, with 5 data points about ESG. So you can easily customize this to share that with them. And then on the metrics side, so the metrics dashboard makes it easy to collect metrics, create metrics, customize metrics, create calculated metrics within the tool related to, again, your goals, targets, the material topics that are relevant for your business, and they can be tracked from start to finish. And you can see, how many open metrics you have, overdue metrics due in the next 7 days, awaiting approval. So you've created a metric and the data needs to be provided or approved by someone within the business. They've been assigned, and so that will go to them for a review and approval. And then depending on what that level of approval requires, it may or may not be rejected, which you can also track on the back end as well. So really comprehensive way and customizable way of managing your ESG portfolio, whether it's carbon, whether it's the big part of the E or the governance and social side. The metrics availability to customize, to tailor, and to tie into dashboards and your goals and targets to track, is unparalleled with any point solution, I would say, that's on the market. This platform and tool addresses many use cases across the entire ESG spectrum, instead of just focusing on one area such as carbon tracking or volunteering and things that might live in other systems and other places. So it's a one-stop shop for anything ESG goal, target, and metric related. And so ultimately at the end of this, what does the flow look like in the process of each of the tool and the product and the solution? So you're setting up goals and targets, you're defining the metrics to meet those goals and targets, collecting the data that supports them. You're doing disclosures to investors and regulators, and then documenting material topics over the cycle of your ESG reporting period, whether that's annually, quarterly, biannually, whatnot. And then with IRM and SPM, which is really about helping to support net zero as well, you've understood your material topics, setting goals, defining metrics, you're planning, executing ESG programs and projects, setting up and tracking those projects, identifying and assessing the risks, auditing the ESG program for airtight data and reportable data, collecting metrics again, disclosing to investors, and the cycle continues. So these are sort of the high-level flows of the product and the command center solution of how we as within ServiceNow are leveraging the power of the Now platform to help companies set, manage, and track and report on their ESG programs. So I think we have another poll. If we want to launch that poll really quick, and then we'll move into the next session. So is ESG an important strategic imperative for your organization? Be really interested to see, depending on where your business is at, where you work within the business and your familiarity with those topics. So we'll leave it open for about 5 more seconds. Okay. So as you can see here, the majority of the respondents said, yes, ESG is an important strategic imperative for your organization, which is great to hear. And then there's some that weren't quite sure, and others that are saying it's coming. So, the majority of these responses indicates to me that ESG is here. ESG is only going to increase in importance, and the requirements of companies and organizations in different geographies around the world are likely going to be facing an increased amount of regulatory scrutiny and likely demand from their business partners, customers, and all of their shareholders, stakeholders to report and track on their performance in their material areas. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jagan to talk about, as you're thinking about your ESG maturity within your organization, where you're at today, where you'd like to be, and where your C-suite leaders would like to be, key things to consider as you start to move along in that journey. So let me hand it over to Jagan to talk about this.
Thanks, Jeremiah. A lot of good points that we discussed. As key next steps, typically what we suggest is, identify the team. ESG is new for many companies. Identify the team within the organization. If you're a customer, plan your team. Who is a platform owner? Who are the process owners? Do you have any kind of procedures and documents that is available? And the second thing is, there are a lot of trainings available within ServiceNow, within e-learning training. Please go through that training. That's a step number 1 I would suggest. Step number 2 would be building your project charter, right? As I said, understand product capabilities, understand your internal processes, start documenting those requirements for sure. Step 3 is selecting partners. We have 2 types of partners. We have partners who are helping in implementation. We have partners who are definitely building content, and on top of our ESG product and solution, they're adding their own additional content providers, additional store apps that are definitely available. Identify those partners and work with the ServiceNow team who can help you to guide to some of the right set of partners. Step number 4 would be, radically transparency with your partners. The important aspect with ESG is, if you're not transparent with your partners in terms of what is your goals, what's your maturity level, it may lead into a situation that may take some time to start the project. So having very transparent discussion and identifying what is your immediate step, what is that you want to achieve, we can discuss that with the partners for sure. Next slide. So we have multiple flexible engagement models, right? We have partners. We also have ServiceNow implementation team who can help in ESG journey. But there are three types of engagements that I've seen if it's during the implementation. Either it could be ServiceNow-led, where our expert services team or customer outcomes team work with you in implementing. There is something called ServiceNow assurance. You can definitely work with your selected certified partner, and our ServiceNow outcomes team will be working along with those partners as an assurance service. And the last one, but not the least, is ServiceNow is very famous for working with all the partners, partner-led end-to-end engagements, right? We have a lot of certified partners that are available. You'll see in the next slide a little bit more about that. So these are the three types of engagement that we would suggest for you. Next slide. Right. So couple of things, right? Within ServiceNow, where we have our customer outcomes teams, we have a lot of documentation that is available, which will help you to start the engagement and help you to start in your ESG journey, if you will. Right. So we have streamlined partner offering frameworks that are available. There are a lot of documents that are available in Now Create, if you will, which are through certified through ServiceNow. There are a lot of diverse partner offerings that are also available, right, in the stores. We will talk about a little bit about that. There are a lot of offerings that are available, which will give a quick start for your ESG journey. So these are a couple of areas where what I would definitely suggest is start looking into the documentation. Reach out to your account team for sure. They'll help you, and we have a lot of partners even in the call. They will be happy to help you. Next slide. These are some of the partners who build apps, who are certified within ServiceNow, ESGM program, who already have implementation experience for some of the ESGM customers. We have a lot of other partners who build partner apps. So a couple of things that I want to highlight is there's a lot of events that are happening with respect to partners and implementation. We did the release ESG training certification program, which is available. And also we have something called Partner Acceleration ESG Contest, which is starting this month, which has a lot of good things to discuss. And please do look out for, if you're a partner, please do look out for Partner Acceleration ESG Contest, which will help you to build apps and get some cool recognition. And you can also work with the ServiceNow partner team. Next slide. Here are some of the resources, right? One important thing about ServiceNow, especially for ESG, although it's a new app, we are using all the new, the old learnings. Like we have a community page that's dedicated for ServiceNow ESG, where you see a lot of posts and blogs and the discussions about products, partners, features, events that are coming up. Also look at ServiceNow Store, where you can learn about ESGM product and how it's integrating with other products. That's definitely available. And there are a lot of documentation. ServiceNow documentation is there already available for ESGM app and how it integrates with FPM, IRM, and other ServiceNow products, and what are the features that are available. We have ESGM documentation that are available. And as I said, we have a brand new ESG implementation training on demand. But if you are interested to learn more about ServiceNow ESG, please do go through this ESGM implementation training, and which is really thought through and articulated, keeping in mind ESG is a new domain for many of the customers and partners. So please do make use of this ESGM training.
All right. Thanks, Jagan. And all this training and these links will be included post-presentation. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the team. So just as we wrap up here, obviously we've covered a lot of ground with ESG. We talked about of defining ESG. Why is it important for a business? Why is it important for, senior leaders within the business? And then understanding the maturity model that we leverage and how our products and solutions tie to those maturity levels to help organizations wherever they're at in their ESG journey, align, define, and implement the programs and policies and action items that need to be done to get them where in that maturity model they'd like to be. So we would love to continue that conversation with you. So please do connect with your ServiceNow account executive or your solution sales consultant to talk about that. And if you'd like further demos and product demonstrations, we're happy to facilitate those as well. All in all, I want to say thank you very much for joining today's session. I appreciate the time you've taken to hear about our ESG maturity model and our product and solution. And if there's any questions that we want to table, we do have a few minutes that we can talk about to wrap up the session.
I think, Jeremy, a couple of questions. One is definitely, the session was really helpful, and people want to know a little bit more about how ESG and SPM and IRM comes together and how they can use it in totality.
Yeah. And so if you're talking, when we're talking about the command center, those application products, they have the capability to feed in, connect to each other, to take the data that's currently being captured in SPM or IRM, if you're an existing customer, and then feeding that into your ESGM product, right? And so now already the ESGM product uses a lot of GRC related components, and there are, I believe, some IRM components just for the base ESGM product. So we simply expand those uses and connection points with the products to allow you, again, to track, monitor, and assign responsibilities for the metrics and tasks that you've created. So it becomes it moves away from just being, a collection point dashboard, metric central, to now it's a proactive risk reporting and tracking on executing against those goals and targets, leveraging those two products. Any other questions, Jagan?
Yeah, one more question, maybe, Maury, or you can answer. Can you please share some of use cases on ESG space on how this is used along with digital transformation? Maury, if you're there, or maybe Jeremiah, you can answer. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Maury.
Yeah. So the question was, some examples of how ESG is used in digital transformation, or how digital transformation and ESG sort of go along hand in hand. The answer to that is that we have back to the basics. There's an extreme amount of pressure to be transparent. So the pressure to be transparent and the volume, the velocity, and the variety of data, so the 3 V's of data, coming to play in terms of digital transformation. Excel is no longer a viable option for you to show transparency because there is no audit trail there. As a sort of the most rudimentary of examples, we're using the digital transformation platform to show an audit trail from end to end. We're using a last mile reporting to show the connection between a data that is being sourced and entered, its documentation, who certified it, who attested that it's good, who approved it through a particular workflow, and then finally how it gets reported. That transparency is what the market is looking for, and for that you need a digital transformation platform, no matter what data you're collecting and reporting. I hope that answers the question from the person who asked.
Great. Thanks, Maury.
It does, I think. This is really helpful. I think many of the attendees are interested to kind of know more. Definitely reach out to your account team and your partner team and the product BUs, and we'll get a survey after this. Please do respond, and if you're interested, definitely we can have a separate call on that.
Yeah. Exactly. Thanks, Jagan. Thanks everyone for attending from the ServiceNow side and externally for the partners, customers, and potential customers. We'd love to speak more about this with you. as ESG is constantly changing and evolving, and we'd love to help map that out and plan that with you. Thanks again. Again, we'll hopefully see you in future events. My name has been Jeremiah Brenner, and have yourself a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.